The leash slipped. Not by accident. The woman had stood there for almost 5 minutes, begging. "Come on, boy. Please." But the dog wouldn't move. His paws were cemented to the pavement, his amber eyes locked on the building in front of them, the elementary school. It looked ordinary enough. Brick walls, blue double doors, laughing kids behind windows. But the dog saw something else. Felt something else. He let out a low whine, almost like a warning. "We're just visiting, sweetheart," the woman whispered, crouching beside him, stroking behind his ears. "No kids to help today, just a meeting." Still, nothing. He pulled back, strong and deliberate. Then, in the silence, a sound. A faint clink, metal on metal, from somewhere deep within the school. The dog flinched. The woman looked confused. The dog wasn't. He had heard it before. Long ago. That sound meant pain. And pain meant stop. He sat down, refusing to budge, ears pinned back, body trembling. Something was very wrong inside that school. And the dog knew it before anyone else. She tried again. "It's okay, boy. We're not here to stay." Her voice cracked despite the calm words. But her dog, Milo, stayed rooted. And then she saw it. His eyes weren't just fixed on the school. They were fixed on a window. Second floor. The glass was clean, untouched. But Milo stared like he was watching something, or someone. Slowly, the woman followed his gaze. Nothing there. Just curtains. Maybe a desk behind it. But to Milo, it wasn't just a room. It was a memory. The woman's hand slowly dropped to her side. Her heart pounded now. She'd seen this behavior before, but only during hospital visits, when patients were in distress. But this wasn't a hospital. This was a school. "Milo," she whispered, "what are you seeing?" The wind picked up again. And from that same window, the curtain twitched. 3 teachers walked by, laughing lightly, unaware. One waved. "What a gorgeous dog." But Milo's head didn't move. One of the teachers paused. "He okay?" The woman nodded too quickly. "Just nervous." The teacher shrugged and continued on. But Milo's body tensed more with every step they took away. He stood up now, not forward, but in a defensive stance. A low, barely audible growl vibrated through his chest. The woman's stomach dropped. He had never growled at a human before. Not even at emergency rooms, not even at shouting crowds. She touched his back. His fur was bristled. "Milo," she whispered. A memory returned. The vet telling her once, "Dogs remember fear. They store it in their muscles." Something had triggered it here. And Milo, her gentle hero, was ready to fight whatever it was. But it hadn't shown its face. Not yet. The school bell rang. Sharp. Dial. Sharp. Jarring. A rush of children's voices erupted from inside. Milo flinched so hard he stumbled backward and let out a bark. One sharp, broken sound. Kids ran past the window laughing, but Milo didn't see joy. He saw chaos. The woman stepped in front of him, blocking his view. "You're okay. I've got you," she said, her own voice shaking now. But Milo's eyes darted, his chest heaving. He wasn't okay. Something in that building screamed at his instincts, something invisible but vile. The woman turned to the school again. Her meeting was in 5 minutes. She couldn't just leave. But how could she force him? She looked at him trembling, the picture of fear. The dog who'd comforted dozens of children now needed comfort himself. She took a deep breath and bent down. "Okay, Milo, show me." Milo sniffed the ground cautiously. Step by step he moved toward the school. Not with trust, but with tension. He stopped at the base of the steps, paw raised. He sniffed again, and then, with a slow, reluctant growl, he stepped to the left, away from the entrance. He approached a vent near the foundation. His nose pressed against the slats. A soft whimper left him. The woman crouched down. "What is it?" she whispered. From inside the vent, a faint sound. Not metal this time. Something softer. Something alive. A tiny cry. Her eyes widened. Someone was in there. She didn't think. She dropped her bag, pulled out her phone and called 911. Milo sat down again, this time not in fear, but in duty. He had led her here for a reason. And it wasn't the classroom. It was what was hidden beneath it. Before the schoolyard and the silence there had been light. Milo's days used to start with the jingle of his therapy vest. The moment he saw it, his tail would thump wildly against the door. The woman, his handler, best friend and anchor, would kneel beside him and say, "You ready to help someone today?" And he always was. Hospitals, reading corners, senior homes, Milo had seen them all. He wasn't just a dog. He was a quiet kind of hero. He would lay his head gently on shaking knees, rest beside children who hadn't spoken in weeks, or follow elderly patients who needed one more reason to keep walking. His eyes always read the room before anyone else. He didn't bark, didn't pull. He simply understood. The boy who screamed at every sound, Milo laid beside him until he slept. The girl who hadn't touched another soul in months, she hugged Milo first. He carried their pain, and never once let it break him. In the hospital's pediatric wing, Milo became a legend. Nurses would light up when they saw him, kids would whisper his name like he was a secret superhero. He didn't need commands, he followed emotion. There was one room he returned to more than any other. Room 213. A small boy named Casey had been there for months. At first, Milo sat across the room, respectful. Then closer. Then, at Casey's bedside. Then one day, Casey reached out, hand trembling, and laid it gently on Milo's head. His first contact in 47 days. Doctors wept. Milo didn't move. He simply looked up at the boy as if to say, "I'm here now. You're safe." Every day after that, Milo would press his nose to the hospital entrance until the doors opened. He remembered. He always remembered the ones who needed him the most. His body was golden, but his soul was stitched with all the quiet stories he never told. Milo didn't just work in hospitals. He visited schools for special needs children, places where anxiety lived in the walls. In those classrooms, his silence was power. The kids didn't have to talk. Milo didn't expect it. One day, a child had a meltdown. Desks were overturned. A teacher sobbed in the hallway. Milo entered the room and simply sat in the center, tail still, heart open. Minutes passed. Then, an hour. Then finally, the boy crawled under a desk and into Milo's lap. That moment didn't fix everything, but it started something. Milo didn't solve their pain. He absorbed it. Week after week, the same classrooms, the same faces, the same soft nudges of encouragement. He was their stability, their constant guide. When he left the building, the children watched him go like he was carrying a part of their fear with him. And maybe he was. At home, Milo was different. Still gentle, still aware, but free to be a dog. He'd chase birds in the yard, wrestle with socks, nap on the sunlit porch like he didn't carry the world in his heart. The woman watched him from the kitchen, always amazed by his balance. How he gave so much, and still had joy left over. Every night she'd kneel beside his bed and whisper, "You did good, boy." And Milo would nuzzle her hand in response. But sometimes he'd twitch in his sleep. A whimper, a jolt, as if remembering something that hurt. She always soothed him gently, because even heroes need healing. He had learned how to comfort pain by surviving his own. And though he never told her, never could, his past was not blank. Milo had lived through things no dog should, and they shaped the quiet protector he had become. Milo had once been a stray. Before the vest, before the hospitals, before her. He had been found on the outskirts of town, matted and limping, hiding under a rusted car. A volunteer had coaxed him out with tuna and patience. His eyes back then were sunken, wary. But he hadn't growled. Not once. He simply trembled. At the shelter, it took weeks before he let anyone touch him. But the woman, she saw something in him. She sat outside his cage every day, reading aloud until finally, he crept forward and placed his paw against the bars. That was the start. She didn't rescue him. He chose her. And together, they created a new story. But trauma never vanishes. It waits. Buried. Quiet. Until the day something, some sound, some scent, brings it back. That school, whatever was inside it, had found Milo's memory. And it was waking it up. The school wasn't just a building. It was a trigger. Milo had been here before, but not as a therapy dog. Long ago in another life, he had wandered onto the school grounds as a stray barely healed from whatever place he'd escaped. A janitor found him. Called it in. And what should have been a rescue became something else. They locked him in a boiler room, just for now. But hours turned into overnight. No food. No water. Just the hiss of pipes and the echo of his own whimpers. When someone finally opened the door, he was curled in a corner, too weak to stand, eyes wide with betrayal. They called him aggressive. They wrote him off. And though he was later pulled by a rescue, though the woman found him, that darkness never left. It had sunk in, carved itself deep. And now, standing here years later, Milo smelled the same metallic scent, heard the same pipe echo, and his body remembered everything. No one ever claimed responsibility. The report said, holding location until animal control arrived. But Milo wasn't an object. He was alive. And the holding became harm. In the years since, others had tried to sweep it away. He's fine now, they'd say. Look at all he's done. And yes, Milo had saved lives. Changed lives. But trauma is not undone by goodness. It waits. It whispers. And the school, with its clean walls and colorful banners, still held secrets in the crawlspaces and closets. The woman looked at Milo now, his body low to the ground, nose pressed to that rusted vent. Something about it felt too familiar. Too deliberate. The same kind of hiding place he had once been trapped in. She realized, maybe he wasn't just remembering. Maybe he was recognizing. Someone else was inside. And Milo knew what that felt like. To be hidden. Forgotten. Afraid. The principal had said it was a safe school. We've never had issues, she smiled. But safe isn't just fire drills and security cameras. Safe is being seen, heard, believed. And not everyone in that school felt safe. Milo sensed it before words were spoken. There had been complaints, subtle ones. A student, often missing lunch. A teacher who closed her door too often. Nothing concrete. Nothing that could be filed. But dogs don't need evidence. They need truth. And Milo smelled it, fear in the hallway carpets, silence under the laughter. His handler didn't know what exactly he had uncovered. Not yet. But in that moment, she stopped questioning him. She simply said, "Show me where." And Milo turned, walking not toward the entrance, but around the side, to a locked, half-forgotten door. The woman followed. The truth was waiting. The door was locked. But Milo didn't need it open to know what lay behind it. He sniffed once. Twice. Then sat, ears pinned, tail unmoving. A soft sound came again, barely audible. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't imagined. It was real. A muffled cry. A human cry. The woman pressed her ear to the metal, heart racing. She heard it too. "Hello," she called. Silence. Then, a shuffle. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She called the office. Told them to bring the custodian. No more ignoring it. No more brushing Milo's instincts aside. Something, someone, was behind that door. And Milo, the dog they once abandoned, refused to let another soul be left unseen. When the door finally opened, the custodian mumbled something about old storage and nothing back there. But as the light hit the space beyond, silence fell. It wasn't empty. A boy died, no older than 8, curled behind boxes, clutching a stuffed rabbit, face smeared with tears. He looked up, not in surprise, but in expectation, as if he'd been waiting. The woman gasped. Milo didn't move. He simply stepped forward, slow and calm, and laid down beside the child. The boy buried his face in Milo's fur. The room was quiet. The custodian stammered. The principal arrived. No one had answers. But the boy was safe now. Because Milo had remembered. Because pain, real pain, leaves a scent. And this time, Milo wasn't the one forgotten. He was the one who found. He wasn't supposed to be there. That's what the principal kept saying. No child should have had access to that space. But someone gave him the key. Someone told him where to hide. The boy didn't speak much. But when the counselor gently asked, "Did someone tell you to stay quiet?" he only nodded. That was enough. The woman stayed silent, hand resting on Milo's back. He didn't need thanks. He needed the truth to be heard. And slowly the pieces began to fall into place. A teacher who had been suspended twice for misconduct. A file quietly closed. A complaint never followed up. It was all there, in drawers and whispers. Not every villain screams. Some just stay silent. Let things slide. Let others disappear. But Milo didn't forget. Not the smell. Not the sound. And because he refused to enter that building, someone had to listen. It was easy for them to say, "We didn't know." But the woman had seen enough institutions pretend ignorance. She'd worked with kids discarded by the system. And she had learned, not knowing is a choice. Milo had no voice, no report to file. But he had refused to walk into that school, and that was louder than any testimony. "He saved him," the woman said flatly. "Your staff didn't." The words hung in the air like a verdict. The principal tried to recover, offering apologies that landed hollow. Meanwhile, the boy clutched Milo tighter. The dog didn't blink, didn't move, just sat like a sentinel. No wag, no excitement, just presence. The kind that says, "You're not alone anymore." It was not the system that protected him. It was a dog who once knew what it meant to be locked away and left. Not everyone looked away. The janitor, an older man with sun-worn skin and tired eyes, approached the woman later. "He wouldn't eat," he said quietly. "That boy. I saw him through the door. Brought food once. Got told not to interfere." His voice cracked. "Should we've done more?" The woman nodded. Sometimes guilt doesn't need punishment. It needs purpose. Milo nuzzled the man's hand gently. He didn't judge. That wasn't his job. But he remembered who helped and who didn't. The janitor knelt, tears slipping down his face. "He knew," the man whispered, looking at Milo. "He knew what we didn't want to admit." And that was the difference between dogs and people. People doubt, delay. Dogs act. Especially the ones who have lived through silence. That night, the school sent out a statement. "An isolated incident. We are reviewing protocols." The woman read it once, then tossed it aside. Words like that don't undo silence. Don't erase hiding places. Milo lay at her feet, finally calm, but still watchful. The boy was with child services now, and safe. But safety isn't just walls. It's the belief that someone will come. That if you cry, even once, someone will hear it. Milo had heard it. He had stood his ground when no one else would. He didn't bark. Didn't bite. He simply refused to enter. And that refusal forced the world to stop and look. The woman leaned down, whispering into his fur, "You did more than they ever will." Milo didn't respond. but his tail gave one soft thump. The kind that says, I know. There are stories that make headlines. This wasn't one of them. No cameras. No viral post. Just a woman, a dog, and a boy who was finally safe. But the woman knew. It mattered. Because there's a truth in the world that few accept. Heroes don't always come with badges. Sometimes they come with fur. With silence. With refusal. Milo never ran in. Never barked or lunged. He simply stopped. And in stopping, he saved a life. That school may fix its doors. The staff may forget. But the boy won't. The woman won't. Milo won't. Some truths don't need to echo across the world. They just need to be remembered by the ones who were changed. And this moment of stillness, of peace, was everything Milo had ever worked for. One boy. One life. Safe. One. She didn't sleep that night. The boy's face, tear-streaked, silent, kept flashing through her mind. And Milo, he slept like stone. Like something inside him had finally stopped shaking. Around 3 a.m., the woman opened the file. The one she'd never dared to read. The shelter records from Milo's intake years ago. It was thin. A single report. Stray mail. Malnourished. Found near old school grounds. She blinked. Old school grounds? She cross-checked the address. It matched. The same building. But here's the twist. The file was dated 3 weeks before the school opened. Back then, the building had been under renovation. Locked up. Empty. Poor one. No staff. No classes. But Milo had still been found there, inside. Trapped. Alone. She gasped. He hadn't just remembered the pain. He had remembered the place. The exact place. The school wasn't a memory. It was his origin. The woman searched archives, property reports, even old newspaper clippings. And there it was, buried in the back of a dusty PDF. Abandoned dog found in boiler room during construction. It was Milo. No name then. No handler. Just a dog trapped inside a skeleton of a school, rescued by accident. A construction worker heard faint scratching and opened a door that wasn't supposed to be locked. The report didn't name him. Just golden retriever mix. But she knew. Milo had come full circle. From trapped to rescuer. From forgotten to remembered. No one else saw the poetry. But she did. And maybe Milo did too. That's why he froze. Why he sat. Not just for the boy. But because he had been that boy. Alone. Unheard. Waiting for a door to open. Waiting for someone to come. She sat beside Milo in the quiet morning, watching his chest rise and fall. How many children had he saved since then? How many moments had he carried without complaint? She stroked his fur and whispered, "You were always the one who needed saving." But that wasn't the whole truth. Because Milo had been saved, not once but every time he was allowed to help. That's how healing works for some creatures. They don't run from the pain. They walk others through it. Milo's silence had always been mistaken for calm. But it was never calm. It was memory. Steady. Focused. Full of weight. He had never truly left that boiler room. He just refused to let others be trapped inside one. And now, for the first time, she understood. Milo's strength didn't come from recovery. It came from remembrance. Later that day, she returned to the school, not for a meeting, not for confrontation, just to see it, to let it be real. Milo didn't walk toward the door this time. He didn't need to. He simply stood at the edge of the sidewalk, looked once, then turned his head away. The message was clear. He had done his job. He had closed the loop. She placed a hand over his heart and whispered, "No more." And Milo leaned into her hand, eyes soft. The building stood quiet. Empty, for now. But she hoped someone would remember what happened here, not just the boy found, but the dog who had once been left behind. Because redemption isn't just about survival. It's about return. And Milo had returned not to relive the pain, but to make sure no one else had to. She didn't post about it. Didn't send emails. She didn't need to. Because Milo's story wasn't for attention. It was for the boy. For herself. For all the quiet survivors who never make it to headlines. That evening, she opened the box under her bed, the one with his first toy, his intake tag, the faded photo from the shelter. She added something new, a printout of the article about the boy being found. Folded gently, placed beside his leash. Milo came over, rested his head on her knee, and let out a long, steady breath. He didn't know she was honoring him. He only knew he wasn't alone. Not anymore. His past hadn't been rewritten, but it had been witnessed. And sometimes that's the most powerful thing in the world. Someone who knows the whole story, and still stays. They told her not to push. It's been handled, the district rep said. Let the system do its work. But the woman had seen too many systems fail the quiet ones. Milo hadn't refused that building just to be ignored. So she called. Wrote. Demanded a formal review. They said it was unprecedented, using a dog's behavior as evidence. But what else could explain what happened? Milo had pointed, had warned, had sat outside that school like a living siren. And because of that, a boy was safe. She stood before the board with shaking hands, photos printed in color, timelines drawn. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply said, "This is what protection looks like. This is what listening to silence can do." And behind her chair, Milo sat, calm, unblinking, the only witness who never lied. The emails started coming in the next day. One from a parent, "My daughter's been scared of that teacher for months." Another, "My son always avoids that hallway." The woman sat stunned, fingers over her mouth. None of them had reported it, out of fear, out of doubt. But Milo had known. He had sensed the fear echoing in the floor tiles, and buried in the locker doors. She forwarded every message to the board. Still, no formal reply. But the school went quiet. One teacher resigned. A custodian was transferred. And the boy. He was placed with a foster family, one with a therapy dog of their own. The woman cried when she heard that. It wasn't justice. But it was something. A crack in the wall. A sliver of light. And sometimes, that's enough to begin breaking down everything else. The woman was asked to speak at a school safety summit. She hesitated at first. She wasn't a public speaker. She was just someone who listened. But she agreed, only if Milo could come too. On stage her voice trembled. "We teach kids to scream if they're hurt," she said. "But we don't always listen when they go silent." She told them about Milo. About the day he refused to enter. About the life that was saved. People wept. And when she was done, she stepped back. Milo stood, tail still, and walked to the center of the stage. He sat. That was it. No bark. No trick. Just presence. The room fell silent. Hundreds of people watching. A dog doing nothing. And yet, it was everything. Because sometimes refusing to move is the loudest thing a soul can do. That night, after the summit, the woman and Milo walked home under a velvet sky. Stars blinked overhead. The world was quiet again. For the first time in weeks, Milo trotted, not cautiously, but freely. His ears bounced, tail swayed. The leash was loose in her hand. They passed the school without pause. He didn't stop. Didn't glance back. It no longer owned a piece of him. Whatever ghosts had lived in its bricks, Milo had buried them. Not with rage, but with resolve. He had confronted his past. Not with teeth. With stillness. And now, the woman realized, he wasn't just a therapy dog. He was a survivor who had turned his own story into a bridge for others. a sentinel of silence, a warrior of peace. They reached home, and Milo headed straight to his bed. But before he curled up, he looked at her once, just once, with that deep golden gaze. Not asking, not needing, just thanking. She knelt beside him, kissed the space between his eyes and whispered, "You did it." He laid down, exhaled once, and let sleep take him. The woman sat beside him long after, her hand on his chest. She knew he was older now, slower, but in that moment he looked eternal. Not because of what he had done, but because of what he had refused to ignore. No medals, no headlines, just one dog, who said no, who remembered, who stood still, and saved everything. Weeks passed. Life didn't change overnight. The school painted its walls, hired new staff, held assemblies about safety and mental health. But the woman knew change isn't paint. It's attention. It's courage. Milo never returned to that school. He didn't need to. His part was done. The boy, the one they almost forgot, began to speak again. His foster parents sent updates. He sleeps through the night now, hugs the dog constantly. Milo's name had become his favorite word. The woman read the messages aloud, smiling through tears. This wasn't justice in the legal sense. There were no charges filed, no courtroom closure. But it was justice in the truest sense. Someone lost had been found. Someone silenced had been heard. Because a dog stood still. And someone listened. Milo slowed down after that. He still wore his vest sometimes. Still visited hospitals on quiet days. But he no longer rushed to the door. The woman understood. He had given enough. One day, she watched him sit quietly in the yard, eyes closed, face turned toward the wind. And she realized he wasn't tired. He was fulfilled. The boy he'd once been, frightened, locked in, alone, had completed his circle. He had helped. He had healed. And now, he was resting not out of fatigue, but peace. She joined him in the grass, leaned against him, and they just sat. No more trauma. No more tests. Just a woman and her dog. Survivors. Witnesses. Still here. Still whole. Sometimes she wondered what would have happened if she hadn't listened. If she had tugged at that leash, forced him through those school doors. If Milo had been dismissed as distracted or difficult. How many stories have been buried because no one thought to ask the quietest soul what they saw? That thought haunted her and guided her. She started teaching others. Not how to train dogs, but how to trust them. She spoke to parents, to teachers, to shelters. Look where they pause, she'd say. Listen when they hesitate. Milo would sit beside her during each talk. No bark. No show. Just stillness. The kind that changes everything. Years later, Milo's vest hung on the wall. Framed. Beneath it a plaque. Because he refused to walk in, someone walked out alive. Children would visit the center she built. Therapy programs, reading spaces, rescue support. And in the quietest room, there was always a spot for the ones who needed to just sit. A place where silence wasn't failure. It was strength. It was strength. Milo had taught her that. Even long after his fur turned silver, even when his steps grew slow, he still offered the same gift, presence. And when his time finally came, he passed quietly, head in her lap, heart steady. He had done what he came to do. And because of that, the world was better. She visits his resting place sometimes, a hill not far from the school, overlooking the town. No statue. No fanfare. Just a simple stone that reads, Milo. He listened. The grass there is always soft. The wind always kind. And sometimes when she sits alone beneath the tree, she swears she hears it. A faint breath, a soft paw step, the hush of a leash dropping. Not from memory. From presence. Milo is still there. Not in body, but in every moment, someone hesitates and trusts that pause. In every teacher who kneels instead of commands. In every child who reaches for a dog and feels safe. Milo never walked into that school. And because of that, the world walked out a little more awake.